Welcome to Ask a Celebrant, a conversational podcast answering your questions relating to all the commemoration and celebrations of all the chapters of your life. I'm Bernie B, full life celebrant.
And I'm Dinah Liversidge. Hi everyone, and welcome to Ask a Celebrant with Dinah.
And Bernie, hi.
Today we're in the Castle Hotel in Llandovery, and a special shout out to the wonderful Susan, who as usual is completely spoiling us. We really wanted to talk today about a subject that's close to both of our hearts, and that is the way that we get to spend time with people.
Oh yes, especially those who are families that are grieving, and the value we add to the process. I genuinely believe the reason that I became a funeral celebrant, can't even speak, is more coffee.
More coffee.
The reason I wanted to be a funeral celebrant was because I really believed I could add value to the management and the processing of grief within a family, and I really thought that I could help with that. I mean, there's no shortcuts through grief, we know that, but
no, that's so true, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I love what you say, and I know that you make an enormous difference to people in grief, because you're really good at observing the space and how it needs to be held. And I think maybe the biggest thing that we all need to learn about grief, because we don't talk about it much in this country,
not really enough,
is that it's okay not to have answers. You can't fix this. No matter what you do or what you say, that person has lost someone.
Yeah.
And once you take that off your shoulders of, oh God, how do I fix this? And instead you can say, how can I be present for this?
Yeah.
It changes everything, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I think letting people know that there's no, giving them permission to do what they need to do, reassuring them that whatever they're feeling, whether that be nothing,
yes,
everything,
yes,
grief, anger, disappointment, frustration, joy even, if that is what they're feeling at any moment, then that's normal and that's okay. Because the amount of times I come across families and I go, it's okay, you can have a laugh, you can joke about that memory, you can go out and for a moment not be thinking of the person you are grieving, and that's not disrespectful. And if you're sat there feeling nothing, that's fine. And if you're bloody angry because of the fact that they're not there, or something you never had a chance to say, or whatever, that's fine too. And let's say that when we are telling their story and dealing with their funeral and sorting out eulogies and waits, let's acknowledge the real and complete and whole person. Okay, we'll do it sympathetically and everything.
Absolutely.
But let's not pretend that everybody who's died was an absolute saint every day of their lives. I mean, no one will reckon. Well, I was sat there.
Who are you talking about?
If I died and they said that about me, everyone would think, oh, am I in the right funeral?
This isn't my friend.
No. I think it's really important to give people permission to be honest about where they are, the relationship they had and the feelings that they have, because the wake or the funeral or whatever you're doing, however you're doing a memorial, whatever it is you're helping them with, is about them taking those first steps on what is, let's face it, a rocky and winding, treacherous journey through grief. And it,
absolutely.
You don't know.
And I love that you say it's okay to not feel anything.
Yeah.
This is one of the things I come across the most, is that almost people saying to me, is there something wrong with me? Because I don't feel what I thought and it's that should word, isn't it? I have a really good friend, Kamisha Foley in the US, who says we beat ourselves to death with shoulds.
Yeah.
And we do. And so many people say to me, I feel like I should be crying or I should be broken. Yeah. But actually, at the moment, I don't feel anything. And I think that's rather clever.
Yeah.
That's your
body
system protecting you and saying, this is too much. I can't process this. So for now, I'm going to park it.
Yeah. I mean, quite a lot of people feel like it's almost like they're having an out-of-body experience. They're watching it happen to somebody else, and they're
Yes.
going through motions in a very detached way. And you're right, it is our body's way of protecting itself and just giving us what we can handle, even though we might think we can't handle it.
And I do think also, as usual, you're spot on because you observe this so brilliantly. We now get to be one of the professionals that steps in and says, we've walked this road, we'll walk it with you, whatever that looks like for you, let us be the map reader, let us be the one who guides you to this bit of it. And it's such a massive privilege, isn't it, to work with people who want to say something and they don't know at the moment how to. Perhaps their grief is making them feel things they don't know how to express, or stopping them feeling. And as you say, that moment where we almost give them permission to share the stories, to laugh again. And
But to say what they want as well. Okay, say everything you want. We don't have to use it in the ceremony, but you can tell me anything you want. And I get told the most wonderful stories about how naughty they were, or you know, the language they used, and whatever. I said, okay, well, you can tell me. We don't have to put it in the script. I said, but I'd love to hear it because that's the real person.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know if you do it. The first time I meet a family, especially if I'm meeting them in person, I say, have you got a picture?
Yes. Oh, I
Share
love that
me a
moment.
picture.
Yes.
What does whoever look like? Because and then it's really nice. Then I say, and prior to that, I used to say, oh, come round to so and so. Where shall we meet? I said, well, let's meet at their house because then I can see how they lived. You can show me if they were crafty. We'll go and look in their craft room. We'll go and look at their artwork. Well, you can get out your photo albums. My time is for them.
Yes.
Once I'm...
Yes.
And that is the joy of being a celebrant. We are not time watchers, are we, in
No,
any way?
oh gosh, no,
There's
you couldn't be,
you
could you, doing this?
You just kind of go
I
in.
love that moment where you suddenly think, I think I know you a little bit now. And for me, it's often a collection of something. So it'll be books or music or knitting or plants. Gosh, when you get to see someone's garden, so often.
I know.
Oh my word, I've been really lucky to help a few families where the person we're celebrating has been really a massive gardener. And to see the care and the thought that goes into planning a space, you start to get little hints of who that person was. And even in the photograph, what's in the background? Oh my goodness, why were you there? And what was the story behind that?
I love the journey we go down with families, and I don't know about you, but I always, when I'm with them and through the journey, and even at the end, I always say at the end, you might not feel anything for 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, but when you do, that's normal and that's fine.
Yes.
And I also say, you have my number now. If you need to talk about it, you can. And by the time I've written a script, usually at the end, when we put a closing in, but before that, I always say, look, there is no structure. We can change the structure of the script and what we say. But usually at the end, I mention, because everyone touches you. There's a little bit of them in your heart.
With us, isn't there? Yes.
And I always make sure I say that. I always, there's always something I take away from a family, be it them or the person we're celebrating, that I didn't have before.
Yes.
For example, Don Williams music.
Oh.
I got that from one family. Whenever a tap drips in my house, I think of another person who was obsessed. And things like I don't know.
I have an azalea
Yeah.
that I saw in somebody else's garden,
Yeah.
and there was a beautiful story about how he got it there.
Yeah.
And now every time I look at our azalea, I think of him and his family and the stories they shared with me. I agree. It's like their little web of stories has now reached a whole new group of people.
I liken it to ripples. I always say to the family, every person is like a ripple in the sea of their life, and the ripples, obviously, that you have been affected by those ripples, and you're in amongst those ripples. but I am now too. So those ripples have gone further.
Beautiful.
And I say to my husband sometimes, I'll say, oh my God, that reminds me of
And then
this
he's
lovely man.
part
Then
of the
he's
ripple
part
too.
of that ripple.
Yes, isn't that glorious?
And I think it's really comforting.
Well, we are
to
all about, stories, aren't we?
We are.
Every family has their stories or their traditions or their kind of almost little family fable, you know. And when we get invited in to share that with others, that's a bit of a gift to us. One of the things I love to do at a ceremony, and it was something that was, I can't remember where the idea even came from, but I did it a few years ago, and it was a rare thing, and I'm doing it more and more now. And that is that the funeral director often creates what's called an order of service. And it'll explain to people, this is what we're saying today, this is the order in which we're going to do things.
It's like an itinerary, isn't it?
Yeah, it is almost, isn't it? And I will tuck into those a little card.
Yeah.
And on one side, it just says, memory is keeping you in our hearts.
Yeah.
And the other side is blank.
Yeah.
And I will say to the people who come to the celebration of this person's life, maybe not today, but over the next week or month or even year, you're going to remember a story about this person.
Yeah.
Write it on this card.
Yeah.
And the next time you see a member of the family, give it to them. Because you have a story with their loved one
that they don't
know. And I saw a family just before last Christmas who I had done a service for Dad, sadly taken much too soon, so still had teenagers. And I saw Mum just before Christmas who ran up to me in a local supermarket and hugged me and said, oh my goodness, we got the most incredible Christmas present. 40 cards arrived in December.
Wow.
He had passed in October.
Oh, and
they all said, let's get these to them before Christmas.
Yeah.
So that they know we're thinking about them.
Yeah.
And they hadn't shared with each other that they were going to do that.
No.
But everybody had done that.
How wonderful.
And at Christmas, they sat together and put them all in a big album.
Oh, how lovely.
And what a joyful thing to do. And they didn't know any of these stories.
That's wonderful, isn't it? That's really interesting you say it, because I do something similar, but I might just tweak mine and borrow a bit of your idea. But because I always say to my families, you can have an order of a service itinerary, but why not why not do your own thing? Just have a postcard with a picture, and on the back, just have, so that people will, or even have it as they can have it as on their board then, because it's not, and it doesn't say order of service, rest in peace, it just has a lovely picture on one side and maybe a poem or something on the other.
Beautiful.
From the order of service, because no one needs to follow an agenda.
No, you're quite right. They really don't.
There's no need for it. And also we find a way of doing that sharing of stories. So it might be something like, one person was really into jigsaw puzzles and puzzles.
Gorgeous.
So we had puzzle-shaped notelets.
And everyone could put them all together.
And then you could put them all together.
That's gorgeous.
And someone else is really into frogs, and so they've got frog notelets, and where everyone's invited to take one and either fill it in there and send it back or bring it.
Isn't that lovely?
So we try and it's just really nice for the family. I said you can gather them together, keep them in whatever container you have collected them in at the time, and then when you are ready, or on occasions when you need, you can dip in
and read
and
one.
get a story.
Oh, that's gorgeous.
It's so lovely to do. I just think it's I think the joy of being a celebrant and being an independent celebrant, like you say, a professional, as you always quite rightly point out, we're all trained individuals, I think, is that we are all unique and we match ourselves. The families are matched to us. I always say to my family beforehand, let's have a quick chat first, because if you don't connect with me, that's fine. I'll find you someone you will. And you have that connection with them, and you have that time to really, really listen and hear what they say.
Yes, we have to be amazing active listeners, don't we?
We do have
It's
to.
that turning off all distractions. I never put an appointment in my diary to see a family if I have something after.
No.
So if I know I have a busy afternoon, I will wait to see that family until the next day, because I never want them to feel she was in a hurry. Dinah made us feel like we were one of the people.
Yeah.
We, as professionals, are doing this every day. To that family, this is their world.
Yeah. They have so many concerns, and you never know what the concerns are going to be, and whatever their concerns are valid concerns.
Exactly.
People always say, I'm sorry if I'm asking a stupid question. There is no stupid question.
No, and of course, because this is not something as a society that we talk about, and it's really good to see people like Michael Rosen, the author, and of course John Adams from the National Association of Funeral Directors. They're talking about this has to be spoken about in school.
Yeah.
It has to be spoken about. We do not talk about death or dying or grief. And so, when it happens,
no one knows how to react,
thinks,
what to do.
Am I being weird?
Yeah.
Is my behaviour appropriate? I was asked that the other day by a wife.
Yeah.
Is it appropriate for me to meet my sister for coffee today? Oh, my darling, I can't think of anything more appropriate. Be with those who love you and nurture you and are going to take 2 hours of your life where you're not sat completely lost.
This whole confusion with tradition and expectation and reality and what we see in movies, how people grieve in movies, those are kind of really false, not necessarily false, but they're condensed and very specific to that story. You know, that's not necessarily what you're going to feel or the time frame in which you're going to feel it. And quite often, families feel it the most when everyone else has moved off and got back on with normal life, because everyone, you think you feel you should have got on with it as well, which of course there's no you may have, but there's no reason why you should have.
No.
But if you have, that's fine. And if you haven't, that's
also fine. Yeah.
You know?
And a lot of families say it suddenly went very quiet.
Yeah.
Everybody was here for me. My community have been so supportive and amazing. Yeah. And there's nothing that they did wrong.
No.
It's just they had to go back to their life.
Yeah.
And it does go very quiet. And it can feel like, am I now being a burden by still needing that space and to talk about it? And the answer to that is absolutely not.
No.
But again, because nobody's talked about that, they don't know.
Yeah.
There's a brilliant poet, and I know you know of her too, Donna Ashworth.
I knew you were going to say Donna Ashworth. I
adore Donna. We all adore you in our profession. Thank you for your incredible words. She wrote a book called Loss. In fact, she wrote 3 books, Love, Life and Loss. And I have found in the last few months, I found myself ordering more copies and sending them to people about a month after I've worked with them. Yeah. And the response I get from every single person I've sent Donna's book to has been, oh my goodness, this poem. Yeah. And there'll be one. Yeah. And each of them has picked a completely different one and said, how did you know I needed to hear this? Yeah. And it's like Donna has reached into this place of grief and said, it's okay to feel this. Yeah. And this, and that, and that. Yeah. And all of them are normal, and all of them are okay. Yeah. And this too will pass. Yeah. And she does it eloquently and
gently
so,
as well.
Gently.
In such a gentle way, doesn't she?
Beautiful. I first fell in love with her words when I read For the Women, which is her series of poems for women, and I bought you a copy.
That. I know, I love it so much.
Honestly, what an incredible gift. It's lovely actually to get to mention her in something we're sharing, because I don't really know if she knows the impact the ripples of her poems have.
She won't, because none of us do we?
No.
None of us appreciate.
But Donna, I hope you hear a little bit of our enthusiasm and genuine appreciation for them, because that's what we can do for families, is we can be the people who find people like Donna and say, in your moment of grief, maybe this will help.
Don't you find when you are preparing a ceremony or celebration of life for a family, that having sat with them and listened and heard and maybe spoken to more than one member of the family, several might have approached you with things they think they want to say, that you go away and you start discovering more amazing writers and readings, and there's always something you think, this is the reading for this family.
Yes.
And you send it to them, and it not only does it help them, but it shows them you've understood what they're sharing.
Yes.
And I have this beautiful collection now of readings.
Yes.
As a result.
And don't you find you go back to them and think, oh, I remember who this came to me for and why it helped. And, oh, it's such a gift, isn't it?
I love carrying all the families I've met with me in my heart. I do love it, and I genuinely mean it. And I usually, like you say, you send something about a month later, I send something usually probably somewhere between a month and 3 months, depending on who they were and what happened and how. And I usually send them something, be it, with a handwritten letter. I always send a little handwritten letter, and I always, in that handwritten letter, say, I'm just checking to see how you are, and I just wanted to say how your loved one is still in my heart, and whenever this, whatever it is, happens, or I hear this or do that, I think of, because it's not something I've made up.
No, it really
it's not
does
something
happen.
I have to go and find. It really does happen, genuinely.
Really does. And I have been hugely inspired over the years by the courage and the sort of camaraderie, the care, the friendship, the relationships that we get to witness when people are going through the worst moment of their lives. Yeah. And we see remarkable thought and care for each other, and that doesn't leave you.
No.
That stays with you forever.
It's really life-affirming, isn't it? You see people in their most vulnerable place. Yeah. But you then see community working together and coming together and carrying each other.
And I have to say, for me, that's one of the best parts of what we do, is witnessing real human care and kindness. It's so humbling, isn't it?
And you said a little while ago about this whole bringing it into schools and talking about it. I think we have in this country managed to detach education from real life. Somehow we learn subjects, and what we should learn is life.
Yes,
the subjects become part of that life. So we teach. I know about relationships, but we talk about the mechanics of childbirth or whatever. Whereas not everyone goes through childbirth, but we teach every child about childbirth, but we don't talk to them about old age. No. We don't talk to them about menopause. We don't talk to them about death. We don't talk to
them about body confidence or individuality or expressing ourselves. We don't talk about the things that matter. I'll never forget my own daughter in her early 20s, in her first proper own home with a partner, phoning me and saying, "Is this a wind-up, Mum?" And I said, "What?" And she said, "I've got a water bill." She had no idea you had to pay for water because they're not taught.
No. And
surely
if you taught
would have been useful.
all the subjects could be taught around real life, couldn't they?
Totally.
All of them. Yet we don't. And I think
even responsibility for water could have been taught around. And by the way, you're going to have to pay rent
and this, that, and the other. Gardening for nature and nature.
Good old Pythagoras theorem was going to be way more useful.
Yeah.
It's bonkers, isn't it? The stuff we
don't. Algebra.
but actually, what that leaves people with is the should. Again, how should I feel? How should I behave? How should I react? And then they're questioning themselves at a time where they just need to be allowed to be whatever they're feeling and for it to be okay.
And that's why you and I are both very keen to shout out about Celebrants, because we know, and I really know, and it's the first job in a long list of really great jobs that I've had in my life where I know that I am really, really good at it, and I'm really making a difference to people in the right way, in a way that matters, because I know that if the people who need to find me can find me, I can really help guide them and support them. I can't take the pain away.
No.
I don't want to pretend I can. I don't pretend I can. But I can say, I understand, you're not alone. This is normal. You don't have to feel ashamed. You don't have to feel embarrassed. You don't have to. There is no timeline.
No.
All of these things that you are told, aren't you over that now? Are you this? Are you that?
Yes.
You need to. And the first thing I do is go, right, okay, we have no rules. We can do exactly what we want to help remember, grieve, celebrate this person. And we can do it at this funeral. But that is not the only time. You don't have to get every word and thought into that 40-minute.
No. And aren't we lucky that we get 40 minutes? There are, sadly, very, in my opinion, it's just so wrong, it's ridiculous. But there are times where we have to carry out ceremonies in a very, very short time slot.
It's an insane.
Profit over care as usual, sadly, and it's lack of infrastructure. That's what it really boils down to.
One of the very few good things that's come of COVID is that you get longer at crematoriums.
Yes.
In most crematorium now, they don't try and do 3 in an hour.
No,
they do 1 an hour.
Thank goodness.
Which has resulted in some delay, but you get a decent amount of time.
But not in all of them.
Not in all of them, no, I know.
That is appalling.
But I think that is just touching on it, and perhaps it's a subject we can talk about as a full thing in another episode. Is the one good thing about the idea of, instead of having the funeral at the crematorium or whatever with your person who's being carried there, is to allow there to be a direct cremation, but also alongside that have a memorial or a remembrance service with or without the remains of your loved one.
Yes.
But because then, wherever you are, it can be as long as you need it to be.
And it can also be appropriate to who's there.
Yeah.
Sadly, one of the ceremonies that sticks with me the most, actually, was for a young man who died in his teens. Obviously had a huge number of friends, and I suggested to the family that having young people, 14-year-olds, have their first experience of losing a loved one, be in a crematorium, was not what they needed. So the family agreed, and what we actually ended up doing was a 20-minute direct cremation service with just myself and the family. We then, 3 days later, on a beach, had a bonfire with a scoutmaster, and we toasted marshmallows, shared stories, and sang songs.
Brilliant.
And that is the experience those young people are left with of losing someone they loved.
And it helps them process. That's the thing.
Totally different experience.
I always say to families, the crematorium is a meaningless place for your family. There is no connection to it. It's just a place that you are told you should go.
Yes.
To say goodbye to someone. I think you should go somewhere that is meaningful to that person, be it a football ground, be it a beach, be it your garden, be it a pub.
Anywhere.
Wherever.
And it really can be anywhere.
And as a celebrant, we can do that service.
Yeah.
We can deliver a service and a ceremony and a celebration absolutely anywhere.
Yeah.
And so why not do it somewhere that really matters to you? And I think we should have a conversation about that next time
Let's
we meet
do
up.
that. I love that idea.
Yeah.
Well, it's, as always, been a flipping joy. I love the things we get to talk about.
Yeah, I do too. I think as soon as we're here, we should order lunch.
I think that sounds like a plan. Bye, everybody. Thank you for joining us.
See you next time.
Ask a Celebrant is unscripted, and we base it on the questions we receive from our clients and you, our listeners. We'd love to hear from you. Do join the conversation.
See you next month.